Well, hello. This is Pretty Lady from the kitchen once again. Well, I want my hair to look a certain way on camera, and it's not looking yet, but I like it all the same. Anyway, um, yes, we're here today, and one thing I want to talk about is just jealousy. So jealousy can happen at any age. You see what happens between children when they're smaller and they're having to be covered by their parents. What does jealousy look like? It looks like maybe a child going grabbing a toy, throwing a tantrum, taking the toy and hitting someone over the head with it, just throwing huge fits of anger, so many tantrums. And if they are not trained to remove themselves from this type of behavior, or the training does not work, they continue to grow this behavior within. I think jealousy is a very underrated, uh, underrated topic, underrated emotion. And here's why. Because people, for some reason, it seems that people are drawn to mean spirited things. They think when you call somebody out that you are telling the greatest form of truth that you actually can. However, this is really frowned upon. Just think about continuously being called out in your home, in a place where you feel safe and secure, and you've made a mistake because you're not a perfect human being. And when you make the mistake, you have to walk on eggshells because you don't want this person to call you out. But yet and still, you may think it's okay to do that to someone else and not sure what type of perception they have. Do they feel bottled in? Do they feel um, like they can remove themselves from it? Are you adding infinitives to it so they can never get out of what you're putting them in? Do you think of them objectively, as if they are not really humans, and you project on that object instead of thinking about them as a person, and thinking about how, if people call it karma, comes back to them if they do something wrong to somebody else. Just because that person is the object of your jokes does not mean that you will not reap karma, or from hurling fits of anger or jealous towards and projecting on them. So I'm going to talk about what jealousy is according to a general definition. It's an emotion. It's characterized by feelings or of resentment, insecurity, or fear of losing something or someone important to you, often accompanied by suspicion or possessiveness. It typically arises in response to a perceived threat, to valued relationships or possessions or status. Okay, so this happens often. People feel this way. However, there is a way to reel yourself back in, to discipline yourself and not act out of the anger that you feel. Resentment is like a strong sense of anger. And so when you allow yourself to act out of that, you might be doing something that you necessarily shouldn't or don't really want to do. So let's talk about how it looks in scripture. So in scripture, it says, it seems, oh, okay. Um, it could be the act of, let's see, it's discussed in a positive and negative context as well. And God's jealousy is positive in a way that it's portrayed to be a righteous and protective attribute over his people and their worship. And it's like a mother or father. The mother or father, they're going to be hurt if their child is hurt. They're going to be suspicious and protective. I have found myself kind of paralyzed. If I think my child is in trouble, I think I've been paralyzed in some situations. If I hear something, like when I was out of town, and sometimes I couldn't get my children on the phone, or I didn't believe it was them talking on the phone. Sometimes I was kind of paralyzed, not in fear, but paralyzed, like wherever they are in time, space, or wherever, subconsciously, that's where I am. If they're hurt, they're alone, and they're afraid, it seems like I was feeling all of it. And I think it caused a lot of stagnation in my life. And my children are constantly moving, changing, evolving, learning, growing, developing just as well, as the seeds that were planted into them. They understand their good and their bad, and they understand what choices they are making. And they understand that they need other people to guide them, a safe circle and things like that to help them along the way. And I think that sometimes when I felt they were in trouble, I was polarized. Now, here is one thing, this might happen to younger parents in some ways. One is they might not be completely developed in all areas as far as internally and physically developed. So some things may offer heightened awareness to them than it would if they were already in their 20s when they had their children. Now I could say whatever I want to because I want to have a reason. I want to find a reason because there is intense feeling of separation and helplessness and hopelessness when you feel like your child is in trouble, but you also know simultaneously that they have a life that God has given them to live. You cannot micromanage and control everything. And sometimes they're going to make decisions and say things and do things that you did not teach them to do and you don't agree with. And it's not your fault and it's not a reflection on you. But you also need to understand that people have that narrative because they like to find someone to hoist their mean spirited nature on. Well, look at the apple and the tree. The apple and the tree sometimes did not coincide with each other. So that is out the window. And sometimes the people who are saying those things, they are more terrible than their children. The only reason why their children wouldn't dare do something is because they know that their parent probably does it 10 times worse or whatever. So it really is case by case in everything. I have found it's just case by case in everything because once we start getting complacent in our narratives and our how can I say in our stigmas or in our thoughts in some types of way, we actually cause stagnation in our lives, and we've always been on some type of anger or some type of toxic or negative thoughts and that will keep us from from seeing the best that God has for us on this planet, seeing the best overall. Like if you have to we have to see negative things because they are indeed challenges that come that we have to work through, we have to learn through. Sometimes we want to go faster than we actually are. We suffer ridicule, and this is one form of prosecution of persecution that is formulated, people saying things. People really sometimes forget how much saying things actually is an action that can cause some type of reaction in real life. So we estimate the power of words and suggestions, but we at the same time people follow them wholeheartedly, transparently, and you can see this as nothing to attest to the fact. I mean, and it's always attesting to the fact that this is possible that people can say things and cause someone to move a certain type of way. But we underestimate the power of our words sometimes, and when we don't cross check what we say, sometimes we have unnecessary hurt hurling around, and some people start to love the bitterness that they move around because they know they can manufacture it and they feel like they're puppeteering. So who is God anymore? Because I can be who God is. I can control everything. But in essence, you still cannot control everything. You can control the situation that you make until that person discovers or researches and finds out that there's a different way, there's a better way. But I believe, yes, even right now, if I have a child that's in trouble, I'm restless, I'm praying, I'm hoping, I'm wishing, I'm crying in my heart. I'm crying when I wake up in my mind, and I'm not actually shedding tears, but my heart is has this struggle to say, it's going to be okay and God's going to work it out. At the same time, I'm still human, so I'm crying in my body, and I want these things to stop, and they won't stop. So the goal for the parent is to get out of that these things just are a natural part of life, and these look at the children, they're actually doing better than you think they would amongst this. Trust in what God has given you to instill in them, and believe that if it tries to erase itself, that it will return. And that's what I have to teach myself, because I can really get real deep into anything that my children tell me. If they tell me that something, it could be a small challenge, it's a small challenge, but I don't say, oh, let me come and fix it for you. But I do try to offer advice immediately. That's my first thing to do, because I know that it's so easy to have negative talk. It's so easy to find somebody with a negative narrative, a bandwagon that you can jump on and the just ride forever on it. I can go, like, my car was out. I could go every day without eating if I think all of that food goes to my child. If my child needs the food, and I went, I go 3 days without eating and didn't even feel a thing. But the reason that I could go without food that way is because I disciplined my body so that I can do without it. And I actually needed a fasting break, to tell you the truth. But then, that gets old. You got to go get some food. And I was thinking, okay, this is a great time to go ahead and take that fast and drink some water or whatever. And I did. And it really helps me. And I'm cleansing my body as well at the same time. So there's always a positive in the negative, but you have to search for it. And sometimes it's harsh, it's cold, it can, if you look at it, it can be lonely, it can be something that you detest. But there's absolute bliss when you find the positive in that, and you can actually apply it in a realistic manner, and it takes you to somewhere that transcends all the so-called abnormalities that people have placed here on this planet for people to regurgitate. Here we go. In scripture, let's go back to it. It's often depicted as a negative emotion associated with coveting, insecurity, potential harm to relationships. And scriptures often provide information on how jealousy is. It can be constructive, and it can be also applied in a virtuous manner. It can also provide love and empathy and protectiveness. However, when you put that negative spin on it, it's always going to turn out that way. So I don't think a person is bad or wrong for feeling a little jealous, because they just don't want you to forget their heart. You don't want them to forget that they have your best interests at hand. You don't want to lose that person. And we sometimes have to realize that God did not make us to be everywhere that our loved ones have to go sometimes, and that we have to gird up ourselves with this word of the Lord, and go through the battles. Go through the battles and trust the Lord and His angels and faith, and be vigilant and prayerful and all of that at the same time. So I try not to be hyper vigilant, but it's really, really like the first thing I think parents go to. Your child gets older, they say, I'm going to a party. Okay, watch your drinks. If you put your drinks down, make sure you don't pick up the same drink again. If your drink is open, do not drink it at all. If you have a drink, carry a drink with you at all times. If you feel like this is convicting you, or you don't really have good energy, or a relationship with these people, don't go with them here or there. Make sure you call me. Where's your phone number? Where are you? I'm going to put a GPS. I'm going to put a low jack in your car. And we just spin out of control. And sometimes it's not out of control. It's just our nature that's telling us all types of things to be protective. But it's good to know that you can trust somebody. Like, if you have a good friend that can be trusted with giving them information. But sometimes good friends have friends that they don't reveal themselves how treacherous they actually are, and they do not care which relationship they annihilate to get what they want. So that's the thing. We have friends that really do not always, well, they don't always behave the same way you would. And as many years you probably know them, they probably still have this little kink, or this little flaw that is that can cause some big trouble or some really annoying trouble that is unnecessary. And sometimes it takes too many losses in the circle or relationship or with other people just because they are unaware of this person's behavior. And it really puts the person in a pigeonhole to try to figure it out, to try to go through it, because nobody wants you to say anything about a friend or a friend. But sometimes people have a different experience with your friends, and you have to be a real friend is able to say, or ask a question, what's happened, what's transpired, do you think this or do you think that, and try to offer some way to be a little vigilant in the throes of things, so that you can do risk management before anything actually happens. Okay, so, and which brings me to the point that I do believe that people can feel better about life if they're not easily offended in those regards, or really being fair in all things, especially not especially, but um, as it relates to jealousy, being fair. So here's what I mean about being fair. Don't pick something based on technicality to do a detect performance just because you don't like the fact that the person said this to you when you know it was well meaning, but you want them to feel bad because you know everybody is not perfect, and you take that technicality that they meant to protect, to love, to help you out, to make it something else, and try to dish it back to them to see if they can dish, if they can dish it, if they can take it, they can take what they're dished out to you. You just want to have a moment and immediate gratification. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's in the right placement. So inappropriateness in those types of situations can grow another leg to the jealousy and the situations that's taking place. Let's talk about jealousy as it's described in the scriptures. God's jealousy. This is Deuteronomy 4:24. It means he desires exclusive devotion and worship from his people. And this jealousy is seen as protective, righteous, ensuring, and his people remain faithful to him. Yeah, only him. This is Exodus 20:5 and Deuteronomy 4:24. Let's talk about human jealousy. Human jealousy is depicted negatively. And, in some ways that makes sense. And here's why. Because we are not God and God is not us, and his ways surpass our understanding. And anytime we try to pretend that we are God or put ourselves in his place, even if you want to pretend that you're nature and you put yourself in your place, you soon learn that you do not have the succinct authorities that God has. And so it can do nothing but become negative because you have overexposure to it, or you're misusing it or misguided. So hold on. All righty, I'm back. So yeah. As I were, that was a long break there. So what I was talking about was jealousy. And jealousy is really horrible. I just learned probably a few days ago that a person that I trusted in my circle was around telling lies, basically because he didn't want anybody to have me because he knew he never would. And I don't know why guys or girls do these things to each other, but seriously, you're not going to get the best person that you're supposed to have out of life that's when you're trying to control the situation in somebody else's life that way. So you just really aren't. And all the things that you get, you think you can throw it up in someone else's face. Those are opportunities that God has given you grace so you can be kind to the person that you're trying to hurt and turn from your ways. But instead, you continue to go on until you find out what the bitter truth is at the end. And I pray that anybody who is unbeknownst to them that someone is doing this, that you are delivered, that you are free, that you shake off all of those negative emotions that are unnecessary, and that you soar past all of the challenges that you're having in your life based on somebody's jealousy, their evil eye, their foolishness, just trying to keep you down and minimalizing your existence and stuff like that by throwing you, instead of appreciating the fact that you don't require a lot from them, they use it as they can throw you a bone and you just take up with them anytime. So they use that in a negative way and they go out and dog other people. Instead of saying, wow, someone is appreciating me, I'm going to show someone else appreciation. So if you're the type of person that you have taken what somebody has given to you, as far as them being very gracious towards you when things aren't going so well, and being appreciative of every little thing that you do, and you take it and say that this person just wants little things. They're underachievers and they're minuscule or they're beneath me, and everything I do is magnificent. So of course they're supposed to want this from me. And if they don't, I'm going to dismiss them. And you go out and treat other people as if they are supposed to do the same to you. And you are stepping on probably some people that are supposed to be pivotal, life changing, not forceful, a reckoning force in your life to help you to the pinnacle of success. But you chose to look at it from a different perspective. So it's not necessarily you being blessed and highly favored and somebody better get on your team type of thing. It's just you having people in your circle who really love you, who really care about you, who really want to be there for the right reasons, or they are afraid to tell you the truth about certain things. They are jealous of you, and they know the only way to keep your favor is to coincide with all of your rants and raves that you have, and they better not say anything different, or they're going to be dismissed completely as a person, erased from the face of the planet that they have built. Those types of things. So it really takes some inspection and more substantial thought, I believe. And for people who don't want to do that, who don't do this, and they live in bliss, then that is their prerogative. And people like me or similar to me, and those, that's what we're here for. That's our place here on this planet. So I can't apologize for that. It's just who I am. Okay, let's talk about excuse me, human jealousy. So, human jealousy is often depicted negatively. It is described as sin, and it involves what happens in Exodus 20:17, James 4:2 and 3, or when it leads to bitterness and conflict, and even the unthinkable things. Just like in Genesis 37:11 and James 3:14 through 16. These types of examples are showing how people spiral out. They spiral out wildly, to do their own thing based on how they want to react. They want to manufacture their reaction as far as jealousy goes. Let's talk about insecurity and fear. Um, Insecurity and fear, people have been placating on that. They talk about the marriage institution as if it's the ball and chain. So let's go to that on the next stream.